silver thread, reflecting the moon in its calm surface. Old cottages leaned gently against one another, their windows glowing with candlelight that flickered like tired eyes fighting off sleep. At the heart of this sleepy town stood a clock tower, tall, elegant, and utterly silent. For as long as anyone could remember, the clock had never ticked. Its two hands, frozen at 12, pointed eternally upward as if waiting for something that never came. The villagers often spoke of it in hushed tones, especially at dusk. Some said the clock had stopped on the night the town was built. Others claimed it had never worked at all, that it was built to remind people of something they had long forgotten. Every evening, when the air turned blue and the mist rolled in from the fields, the tower would seem almost alive. Its bricks would glisten with dew, and the air around it carried a faint hum, a sound that no one could quite place. Children said it was the tower breathing. Old men, half smiling, said it was just the wind finding its way through the cracks of time. But one person did not believe in stories. Elias Thorn, the only clockmaker in Merrilbrook, lived just a short walk from the tower. He was a quiet man, his fingers always stained with oil and brass dust. He had fixed every watch, every clock, and every broken chime in the village, except the one that loomed above it. For years, Elias avoided the tower. He passed it daily, eyes averted, pretending not to hear the faint ringing that sometimes whispered from within its walls, until one autumn evening when the mayor came knocking. The mayor, a nervous man with a voice like shuffling paper, stood in Elias's doorway. "Mr. Thorn," he said, "the festival is in 3 days. The people are asking for the clock to ring at midnight, just once, a single chime, that's all." Elias hesitated.
Morning came quietly to Merrilbrook. The mist still clung to the rooftops, and the river glowed faintly under a pale sun. Elias Thorn walked slowly toward the tower, his footsteps muffled by the damp cobblestone. Each step echoed softly like a knock at the door of time itself. The tower loomed above him, ancient and still. Up close, the stones seemed alive with age. Small cracks spread across the surface like veins. The heavy wooden door at the base was half open, though no one in the village could remember ever seeing it that way before. Elias hesitated. The air felt colder near the tower, as if the years themselves had gathered here and refused to move on. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. Dust filled the air, swirling in the weak sunlight streaming through the cracks in the walls. It was silent, but not empty. Somewhere within that silence was a presence, gentle, patient, almost listening. Elias climbed a narrow spiral staircase. His fingers brushed the rail, feeling grooves worn by centuries of hands that had come before him. Halfway up, he passed an opening where the old bell hung suspended. It was black with age, its surface dull and cold. He reached out to touch it, but the moment his hand came close, a faint vibration passed through the air. He froze. The bell hadn't moved, yet it felt like it wanted to, as if it remembered something he didn't. Finally, he reached the clock chamber. A single shaft of light cut through the room, landing on the massive gears that filled the space. They were beautiful, intricately carved, perfectly aligned, and utterly still. No rust, no damage, just motionless perfection. Elias knelt beside the main mechanism and inspected it carefully. Everything was in place, every cog, every pin, every delicate spring. By all reason, it should have been ticking. He pressed his ear close to the metal, listening for the smallest hum. Nothing. And yet, something deeper stirred. Not a sound, but a feeling, like the faint rhythm of a heartbeat hidden beneath stone. He sat back, eyes unfocused, and whispered to himself, "Why won't you move?" From somewhere above, a drop of water fell, plink, onto the brass plate beside him. The sound echoed in the hollow chamber, sharp and lonely. And then, for the first time, Elias noticed the clock face from inside. The glass was cracked, not from age, but from within, as if something had tried to escape. He followed the cracks upward and found a small wooden panel near the base of the face, sealed shut by an iron latch. When he touched it, the latch gave way easily, as though it had been waiting for him. Inside, there was no mechanism, just a folded piece of parchment, brittle and yellowed with time. Elias unfolded it carefully, revealing faded handwriting that trembled across the page. Time will begin when someone remembers what was forgotten. He read the line again, his pulse slowing to the rhythm of his own breath. The air grew thicker, heavier. The tower seemed to listen. Elias whispered the words aloud. Time will begin when someone remembers what was forgotten. At that very moment, the faint hum returned, soft at first, like a sigh escaping from the walls, then stronger, a vibration deep beneath the floor. The gears shivered, the air trembled, and for a single heartbeat, the second hand of the great clock moved. Just one tick. The sound was so soft that Elias thought he had imagined it. But when he looked up, he saw the shadow of the clock hand had shifted, just slightly, on the wall. Then everything fell still again. Elias's heart raced. He knew what he had heard. The silence wasn't complete anymore. Something inside the tower had awakened. He stood there for a long time, staring at the gears that refused to move again, and somewhere deep within the walls a whisper seemed to echo back at him, so faint he could barely tell if it was real. Find what was forgotten.
And hesitant to sing. Yet high above the rooftops, something had changed. If one listened closely, they might have heard it. A single, almost imperceptible tick echoing from the tower. Elias Thorn didn't sleep that night. He sat in his workshop, staring at the parchment he had found, the one that read, "Time will begin when someone remembers what was forgotten." The words pulsed in his mind like a heartbeat. He had remembered something. But what? He closed his eyes. The faint hum of his clock surrounded him, hundreds of small lives, each keeping time faithfully. But the tower, that clock had never belonged to this world of measured seconds and mechanical rhythm. It was different, older, alive. At dawn, Elias returned to the tower. This time, the door was open wide. Inside, the air was lighter, as though the place itself had exhaled for the first time in centuries. He climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked under his weight, but it no longer sounded hollow. It was like the tower was speaking, groaning back to life. When he reached the chamber, he found the parchment gone. In its place lay something else, a single brass key, polished and warm to the touch. He turned it over in his hand and noticed an inscription so faint it was nearly invisible. It read, "The heart of time beats only when remembered." Without fully understanding why, Elias brought the key to the center of the clockwork. There, hidden beneath the gears, was a small keyhole, one he had somehow missed before. He inserted the key and turned it gently. A low, resonant sound filled the chamber. The gears shuddered, dust cascaded from the ceiling, and the great pendulum, frozen for as long as anyone could remember, began to move, slowly, gracefully, as if it testing its own weight after a long slumber. Then, tick, a sound so pure, so delicate, that it seemed to echo across the entire village. Children stopped in the street. Old men looked up from their porches. The mayor, mid-sentence, froze where he stood. Every ear turned toward that single, living sound. And then another. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The clock was alive. Elias stood motionless, tears forming quietly in his eyes. The rhythm filled the tower like a heartbeat, slow, steady, eternal. It wasn't just time returning, it was memory. As he watched, the golden hands on the clock face began to move, casting shifting light across the chamber. The morning sun touched them, and for a moment the whole room glowed. Elias thought he saw faint shapes dancing in the beams, shadows of the past, perhaps, or the memories the tower had guarded all along. And then a whisper, soft as breath, filled the air around him. "Thank you, Elias." He turned sharply, but no one was there. The tower stood silent once more, its ticking steady and calm. But Elias knew it wasn't a voice outside him. It was the tower itself, alive through the heart that finally remembered. He smiled faintly, his reflection shimmering in the brass gears. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. When he stepped out into the morning light, the bells above began to chime, 12 slow, majestic notes. The entire village gathered beneath the tower, watching in quiet awe as the clock rang for the first time in history. Some smiled, some cried, and though none of them knew why it had finally awakened, everyone felt it, a weight lifting, a calm spreading through the air. Elias looked up at the tower one last time, the sound of ticking now blending softly with the rhythm of his own heart. The forgotten had been remembered, and time for Merrilbrook had begun again. November 1st.